Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's workshop. NUS Fintech Month is an annual flagship event organized by the NUS Fintech Society to prepare the next generation of business leaders, entrepreneurs, developers, and other professionals to develop and apply new financial technologies and business practices, both now and well into the future. With that, we have prepared a series of workshops, panel discussions, and a hackathon. In today's workshop, we are happy to have Charmin Ho, Head of Crypto Insights from Bybit. With her passion in GameFi and Web3, she has the best knowledge in finding the right product fit, incorporating its element for the gaming industry. I will now pass my time over to Charmin to introduce more about the blockchain to you. Charmin, please.
Hi everyone, Charmaine here, and yes, I lead the Crypto Insights team at Bybit. So today we'll be talking about the introduction to blockchain. Right, so next. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just like what I'll be going through. So first will be what blockchain is about, the consensus mechanisms, and a comparison or just a brief rundown between blockchain and Web2 technology, as well as the benefits and disadvantages of blockchain. Okay, next. One more. All right, so before diving into what blockchain technology is about, I just wanted to share with you guys the history of blockchain and when it first started. So while it might seem that the rise of blockchain only began recently, the idea and theory behind blockchain has actually been in the works since 1991, and that's more than 30 years ago. 17 years after, the famous Bitcoin white paper was released by Satoshi. From then, we actually started to see blockchains progress, picking up pace extremely rapidly. And starting with the first transaction of 10,000 BTC, and that's for pizza. Then in 2015, Ethereum entered the space, while DeFi and NFTs boomed in 2020 and 2021 respectively. Okay, next. So just before we want to dive into what blockchain technology is about, it's actually quite important to understand the difference between centralization and decentralization. So a centralized database is one where only an exclusive and select group of people have access to the database, and they are able to view and edit the transaction ledger. On the other hand, a decentralized database is one where literally everyone and anyone, not just those who transact via the said database, can gain access to all the transaction data contained within it. Next. And so we come to the big question that drives this presentation. What exactly is blockchain technology? So imagine a data storage system where groups of transaction data are stored in blocks. These blocks are then built on top of each other and linked through chains. Once linked, the data in these blocks are not able to be tampered with, and hence you have your blockchain. So as mentioned earlier, imagine a public ledger where it's being shared among all parties. You can think of it as a giant Google Sheet of sorts. So why is this an appealing factor? And what makes blockchain attractive? Is that data stored on these chains are impossible to be altered without the knowledge of everyone else, since everyone is able to access and view it. So in other words, data on these chains are fully transparent. I think I'll dive more into this when we talk about the advantages of blockchain. Okay, next. Yeah, so giving everyone view access is one thing. Edit access, however, it's a bit more complex. It's simply not safe for everyone and anyone to be able to access and add in data without a system in place to discourage malicious actors. This is why all new transactions require consensus among all parties for them to be accepted and recorded onto the blockchain. Okay, next. So there are many types of consensus mechanisms out there that are adopted by different chains. However, today I will be going through two of the more popular types of consensus mechanisms. Okay, next. Okay, so now I'll be explaining the OG consensus mechanisms to explain just what these things are about. And the first will be proof of work. So what exactly is proof of work? Let me break it down into simpler terms for you guys. So if you recall, before you can even input transaction data onto the database, it must first be verified by all participants involved in the network. But I guess let's be realistic, right? So some of these networks, especially the more popular ones, can have thousands or even millions of network participants. Therefore, it's not feasible for everyone to verify every single transaction that comes through this network. So how do we solve this? For a proof of work system, it utilizes the concept of miners. So I'm sure you guys have heard of Bitcoin miners before. And what they do in the proof of work system is basically verifying every transaction that comes through for all participants in the network. In a way, they do this tedious work so the rest of us don't have to. Now, the question comes to then, how can we trust these miners? Well, we can't trust the characters or even the people behind these operations. We don't actually have to. We simply just need to trust their actions, that their actions will bring about no harm to the network and that everything they do is for the benefit of the network. So let's dive deeper into how we ensure this. Next slide. One more. Okay, thank you. So it's very straightforward. Before a miner can add any block of data to the network, they must first solve a complex mathematical equation. This equation is not like any that we know of. It requires pure guess and check and like a brute force to sort of arrive at the answer. And there's no replicable methodology that miners can use. Hence, miners require the use of extremely expensive hardware called ASIC machines to solve for these equations and add blocks of data to the network. So this incentivizes the miners to not only do their best for the network, and it's for two clear reasons. First is that these ASIC machines are extremely expensive, and the miners who invested heavily in them will obviously want them to continuously be useful. So there's no reason for them to desire the network being corrupted by any malicious actions, because if that happens, then they will have wasted all their money that they have invested into these hardware. And the second reason is that whenever miners successfully verify transactions, they will earn block rewards and it's paid out in BTC. So this further provides a pull factor for them to want the network to succeed. In other words, the carrot, which is the block rewards, and the stick, which is the expensive hardware, will render it such that the network participants will be able to trust the miners' actions without actually trusting the miners themselves. Okay, next. So this is like a photo of what the machines will look like. And on the right, you can see that usually they have thousands of such machines. Okay, next. So another popular consensus mechanism is proof of stake. Proof of stake involves offering up economic stake by locking up a certain amount of money in the network before being able to validate new transactions and earn rewards. So malicious actions by validators are disincentivized through confiscating of money staked and when they validate a dishonest transaction. So I don't think I'll dive too much into this mechanism, as essentially it's the same as proof of work, just with different components and methods of proving trustworthiness. Okay, next. Okay, so do note that there are both private and public blockchains. So public blockchains are one where everyone and anyone can join. Hence, consensus mechanisms are needed for safety. And in the case of most private blockchains, there's no need for consensus because participants have already been vetted beforehand and are trusted. So private blockchains are more similar to other forms of DLTs, but they are not centralized databases because they are still peer-to-peer and they are still distributed. For centralized databases, they employ a client-server model. So I guess to put it simply, private blockchains are distributed, but not necessarily decentralized. Okay, next. Okay, so in summary, a blockchain is immutable and transactions cannot be tampered with because, as mentioned before, it's transparent and you're not able to change it because all the blocks are linked and thus the network will not allow changes. Comparatively, a non-blockchain is centralized. Hence, anyone with admin rights can edit the data without anyone else knowing. This exposes the system to individual actor risks where anyone with admin rights and malicious intent can manipulate the system. Secondly, since all blocks are linked from point of origin, data is organized transparently in chronological order. And this can include data from multiple parties and entities. So it will still all be automatically organized because of how blockchains are like. Whereas on non-blockchain, data is not usually transparently recorded, and especially when it involves multiple parties and entities, because they will usually rely on humans for the liaising, coordination, and data input. So usually it gets really messy. So I think just to give you an example, imagine you go into NTUC and you buy a cabbage, and you go home, you eat the cabbage, and you die because the cabbage is poisonous. So in this scenario, NTUC would likely do a total recall on anything and everything that touched any of the components of the supply chain that the cabbage went through. And you see, this is very inefficient and it's a waste of food and resources. So this scenario is an example of a non-blockchain, since it's not transparent and points of contact are not recorded in chronological order. But let's say we apply the blockchain concept to the scenario, then NTUC will be able to efficiently pinpoint all the items that came into contact with the cabbage and track where the cabbage has touched, what the cabbage has touched in chronological order as well. So you can see it's more efficient and less waste of resources. Okay, next. So now we'll move into Web 3 versus Web 2. But I guess before we do that, next we can sort of look at next slide. Yeah. We will ask the question, does blockchain equal to Web 3? Well, the term Web 3 is actually coined by Polkadot founder and Ethereum co-founder Gavin Wood in 2014. And it refers to a decentralized online ecosystem based on blockchain. So just to give you some fun facts is that Web 3 is a different concept to Web 3.0. Web 3.0 focuses on the efficiency and intelligence by reusing and linking data across websites. Web 3, however, puts a strong emphasis on security and empowerment by returning control of data and identity to users. Okay, next. So we go to Web 3 versus Web 2. But these are not mutually exclusive or dichotomous concepts, and it should actually not be viewed as such. There's a lot of value having Web 3 concepts and technology work together with Web 2 ones. The metaverse is one such example. For our idea of the metaverse will never actually be possible without the synergy of both Web 2 and Web 3 concepts. So there's a lot that each side can learn from one another, and we always have to maintain a balance in all things. Okay, next. Okay, so then we'll go into the benefits of blockchain. Yeah, okay. So I think when we look at the entirety of things, there are many benefits that blockchain technology can bring to the table. But I think these are the three main ones and the most overarching ones that I would like to share with you guys. So first is immutability. And as mentioned, it's impossible to erase, edit, or replace recorded data on the blockchain. Therefore, the immutable nature of blockchain networks prevent data tampering within the network. This is in contrast to conventional databases that typically utilize the CRUD model, which is the create, read, update, and delete model at the primary level to ensure proper application operation. So as you can tell from its name, this model enables easy erasing and replacing of data. And such data can be prone to manipulation by rogue and or corrupt administrators or third-party hacks even. And second is the transparency and traceability. So blockchain networks record the entire history of their transaction data to point of origin, as we talked about previously. So all subsequent data points after are all recorded. Furthermore, everyone and anyone, not just those involved in the said transactions within the networks, will have access to these transaction data. So this is once again in stark contrast to traditional centralized databases. Because in traditional centralized databases, users cannot verify transaction information whenever they want. And centralized administration can choose to cherry pick selected sets of data to make public. In this case, there's not really much transparency at all, and the burden of trust is fully on the said centralized administration. Third will be smart contracts. So because of the decentralized, trustless, transparent, and immutable nature of blockchain networks, transactions can be fully automated via smart contracts. So for more context, once pre-specified conditions are met, the next step in transaction or process is automatically triggered by the smart contracts. Therefore, smart contracts and blockchain technology, by extension, this intermediates human intervention and removes the reliance on third parties, which can sometimes be bad actors. And this will help to verify that the terms of a contract have been met. For example, let's say in insurance, once a customer has provided all necessary documentation to file a claim, the claim can automatically and instantly be settled and paid if the operations run on a blockchain via smart contracts, which makes it more efficient. Yeah. Okay. Next. Yeah. So although blockchain technology has been around since 1991, it's still relatively new in terms of how people in the space are attempting to use it. So there are actually many kinks that have yet to be ironed out, and this space faces new challenges every day, which bring us to the negative impacts, or rather the disadvantages of blockchain. So first off, it has to be noted that blockchain technology is actually pretty clunky and inefficient to implement in systems. And this is because blockchain networks carry out way more operations than other systems. So for example, first, it performs signature verification, which involves signing transactions cryptographically. Then, and as mentioned previously, blockchain also relies on consensus mechanisms to validate transactions. And some consensus mechanisms, such as proof of work, have low transaction throughput and is extremely inefficient for most operations. And even consensus mechanisms with much higher throughput, like proof of stake, require many convoluted and complex steps to be executed before the transactions can be verified and processed. Finally, there's the problem of redundancy, where blockchain networks require each node to play a crucial role in verifying and storing each transaction, so rendering it a pretty inefficient process all around. Next is the issue of human fallibility, and this is twofold. First, the inability of individuals to safeguard their own assets is definitely a huge disadvantage of blockchain tech. So as seen in recent times, so the ability of individuals to act as their own bank is extremely crucial when it comes to blockchain technology due to the decentralized nature. But this raises another issue, because private keys are needed to access resources or data stored in blockchain networks. And the management of these private keys is often not the most simple or straightforward task. Even for veteran users, due to the huge number of attack vectors like phishing and dusting attacks. If a user loses his or her private key, they will no longer be able to access the wallet and their assets. So the blockchain's dependence on its users is definitely a limitation, because all humans are necessarily fallible. Second, blockchain technology, nascent as it is, opens up many different vectors of attack for bad actors to exploit unwitting users. So one example is the 51% attack. So network control is possible only if one entity controls 51% of network nodes. They can then make changes to ledger and double spend. This is possible on networks with controllable miners or nodes. So 51% of attacks, therefore, are less likely to occur on private systems and more likely on public systems, like most permissionless blockchain networks. Another possible mode of attack that some blockchain networks are vulnerable to will be the DDoS attack. So this is where nodes will be flooded with requests for the same thing, which then slows down or stops the network entirely. Therefore, the functionality of blockchain technology is still very much hinged and premised upon human behavior, something that has proven time and again to be completely erratic and unpredictable and sometimes even deceitful. So the last point that I would like to touch on is that, ironically, one of the main disadvantages of blockchain technology is in actuality one of its greatest assets, which is the immutability of data. So in simple terms, blockchain technology does not allow easy modification of data once recorded. And it requires rewriting the codes in all of the blocks, which is extremely time consuming and expensive. So the downside of this feature is that it is hard to correct a mistake or make any necessary adjustments. This has insidious implications, and every person on the earth, so for example, every person on the earth has right to privacy. However, if the same person utilizes a digital platform that runs on blockchain technology, then he will be unable to remove his trace from the system when he doesn't want it there. So in simple words, there's no way he can remove his trace, leaving his privacy rights into pieces. Further, said immutability can only be presented if the network nodes are distributed fairly. So in essence, a blockchain network is vulnerable if one entity owns at least half the nodes. So I think I've gone through quite a bit of information with regards to blockchain. And I hope you guys have learned something from it. And you guys can actually learn more on our blog. So next slide. Yeah, so if you guys want to know more about blockchain or anything in the crypto space, you can head to BybitLearn or BybitBlog just to find out more, because we have a lot of educational pieces there as well. Yeah, I think that's all from me now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Charmian, for sharing your extensive knowledge of blockchain and prior experience with GameFi as well as Web3. So I believe it was such a fulfilling session for all of us here. So we would like to move on to a Q&A session. So if any of you have any questions, feel free to type into the chat box or unmute yourself to ask questions to Charmian.
Okay, so what is the future of blockchain? Well, I think this is an interesting question and one that I think many people are interested to know about. As I've mentioned, there are so many advantages to blockchain and benefits of the blockchain, but it's how we are going to use it that would make the future of blockchain. So I guess to put it simply, the future is up. I guess you can say it's up to us and all the industry players and how we want to use it. But definitely there are many use cases for it. Yeah.
Shami, actually, I have a question. I just want to say thank you for sharing. It was very insightful. But do you think like the Web3 space is overhyped? Like youngsters, they think, oh, it's Web3, so it sounds very cool, and so everyone wants to join. Do you think it's like overhyped?
Well, I think Web3 deserves the hype that it got, right? I mean, I think we are all here, or at least those of us in the industry actually believe in the technology and the use cases behind the technology that we are so passionate about. But of course, the hype also comes with a lot of noise. And that's when I think it's very important for us to have some sense of like crypto literacy to understand how to sieve out the important points from all the noise that is buzzing within the space. Yeah, so actually do stay tuned, because actually Bybit is releasing a crypto literacy report as well that will shed some insights into how you can safely navigate the space. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, no more questions. Thank you so much, Charmin, for responding to all the questions and everyone for attending this workshop. And I hope you guys learned a lot about blockchain from this session. And before you go, I will strongly encourage you to actually fill out the feedback form. I will share my screen. Yep. Scan this QR code to complete the feedback forms to be eligible for bingo prizes. Thank you so much for attending the workshop. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Charmin.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Charmin. Have a good
Thank
day.
you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.